And I'll start the video conference recording too.
This conference will now be recorded.
That always ends the chatter, doesn't it?
It is 7 o'clock. I would like to call the October 21st DeSoto City Council meeting to order. Start with roll call, please.
Lane.
Here.
Daniels.
Here.
Michael.
Here.
Ritter.
Here.
Murdoch.
Here.
There appears all are present.
Okay. I would invite you all to please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, our first item tonight is the consent agenda. We have approval of our minutes from our council meeting of October 7th, approval of pay ordinance number 912, and approval of resolution 1056, allowing consumption of alcohol. No, I haven't had any alcohol yet. I just can't say consumption of alcohol at Riverfest Park. Anything anyone would like to discuss or a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion. We approve the consent agenda.
Second. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Lane.
Yes.
Daniels.
Yes.
Michael.
Here. Yes.
Ritter.
Yes.
Murdoch.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Item 2 is call to public. Members of the public are welcome to use this time to comment about any matter relating to city business not listed on tonight's agenda. Anyone wish to address the council under call to public? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 3, old business. We have none, so we'll go to item 4A, receive report from Chamber of Commerce President Sarah Ritter.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Okay. All right. I would first like to start off and introduce Katie Fallon. She is the new Chamber Vice President. and she's with us tonight. And that is starting off our presentation with our Chamber of Commerce report. So we're glad to have Katie on board, and she will be handling the Chamber of Commerce administrative and organizational functions. So I have two different reports to give you. One for the first part is more of an educational in nature, describing the Chamber of Commerce functions for everyone, and then to give you a little bit of feedback on how our organization has developed over the past couple of years with our restructuring, and then there from that, all of the activity that's taken place from an economic development perspective. So Mike, if you're ready to go to the first slide.
Yep. Thought it was.
Okay, so the U.S. Chamber of Commerce defines a chamber as a not-for-profit, voluntary partnership business and professionals that work together to build a healthy economy and improve the quality of life. And then it goes on to describe some of the goals that the chambers of commerce would have. So we have different functions. Obviously, is economic development and tourism, a representative and a voice for the business community. There's also, we perform government relations for the chamber members as well, and provide information to the public. So it's a good, I don't know what to say, but it's just a really good description of what a chamber is and how our chamber functions correctly with what the function is. So the next slide talks about Chamber of Commerce myths. So there's 5 myths that really stuck with me as to what most citizens would think of as a chamber. So the first one is we're part of a governmental entity. Obviously, by the IRS certification, we're a 501c6, which has its own not-for-profit business membership status. Number 2, we're only for big businesses. We have various types of businesses, from small businesses that are a one owner to businesses that have 800 employees. So businesses of all sizes and types are parts of a Chamber of Commerce. Number 3, the chamber is for-profit and costly. I believe, based on our numbers, that likely the Chamber of Commerce is probably, our membership dues is probably one of the lowest in Johnson County. Obviously, we try to bring in fundraising activities on our membership dues, but we do not do this for profit. Number 4, since the chamber is a nonprofit, we have no expenses. That would be great, but we have to run as a business. Even though we're nonprofit, there are still bills that are to be paid. So employees, growing the organization, as there's more requirements and needs for our services, our staff has to grow with that as well. And that leads us to number 5, that chambers are ran by volunteers. Typically, back in the early days, and I would say that most smaller communities would start out with a volunteer chamber of commerce, where businesses would go together and they would organize their chamber, which happened to our chamber probably early 1970s, late 60s. And they would rotate the organization through the business members. As the need for chamber services grow, eventually that turns into a part-time or full-time position that would function and run the chamber. So the next slide that we have is what is an Economic Development Council, which we call as an EDC. So it's also a member-based organization whose mission is to promote economic development within a specific geographical area. The function of these entities are to help the businesses with their geographical area to get started, to help them succeed and grow, and then also develop economic growth in businesses to the area. So economic development organizations in this description is actually how we function. So our EDC is a complementary capacity of the Chamber of Commerce. So that means that the Chamber of Commerce is the parent entity, the 501c6 that's designated by the IRS, and then the Economic Development Organization operates under the umbrella of the Chamber. Okay, Mike, I'm ready for the next slide. So I wanted to talk about how the governing body strategic plan, when you all had started that in 2017, it touched on some of the functions of an economic development organization. And one of those initiatives that you as the governing body had talked about was promoting new business and supporting existing businesses. So we, as an Economic Development Council, saw that your strategic plan included these efforts, and because of our partnership with you, started working on the tax abatement policy and working with our existing businesses, conducting meetings with them to find out what, if any, obstacles that they need to overcome to help grow their business and make sure that everyone is functioning and has all of the services that are required. So this was in 2017, and then the next slide, Mike. As the years progressed, there was more focus on economic development efforts, and so you'll see in this one it says work with the EDC to enact the recently completed roadmap, which was our own strategic policy. That was a directive of the governing body, the City of DeSoto's strategic policy as well. So you'll see that it talks about because we are starting to grow and expand our services, that needs the city would financially support the efforts of our EDC and the previous commitments that they've had. So you started to see at this point that the EDC's structure and our missions would emulate more incorporating your strategic plans. And next slide. And then as the next year went on, you could see that it talked about, I believe this was in 2019, annexing surrounding areas as appropriate and when needed to facilitate growth. So at this point, you'll start to see the Economic Development Council and the Chamber of Commerce as the parent entity starting to incorporate those objectives into our plan back in 2019. And some of the other goals that were actually on this slide was working with Johnson County and Sunflower Redevelopment to develop the former Sunflower Army Ammunition Plant. So you'll see a lot of our efforts starting in 2019 had started to focus on these as well. And then it talked about our overall process that we had from our own roadmap was to make sure that we have business retention and expansion, that we're attracting and recruiting new businesses into the community. We're maintaining and improving our quality of life. And then basic from that, our own internal organizational growth. We knew that the task at hand that we were needing to accomplish was going to be too much for one employee. And from that, all of incorporating our strategic plans into this as well. So strategic initiative number 1 focuses on recruitment. It's really important to have networking contacts with builders and brokers and employers. So we had started to begin taking on more focused efforts to engage those groups of individuals and to really develop these relationships over the past 5 years. It also focused on information on easy access. That includes subdivisions and the number of available lots, vacant land, and the capacities. So we have in our system what's called a Location 1 information system. And what it is it's a database for available buildings and land. And you insert the information, and from our website, from the Kansas Department of Commerce website, and the Kansas City Area Development Council, anyone that's looking for available buildings or land would be able to access DeSoto's information from that. And so that's been really helpful. And we started then to identify as an economic development organization that we needed to be able to assist the city in determining what capacities, what the costs were for the vacant land as well, because it's going to take infrastructure to get that land available. One of the items that we did was conduct a summit to extend those relationships and then assist, not even the large businesses and the small businesses, but all businesses. And those small businesses are is equally as important because small businesses grow and expand and become large businesses. Hey, Mike. So this is just to give you an idea, expanding and strengthening our relationship with the Kansas City Area Development Council, networking with the area developers and builders, and then we start marking that information to our members and those connections. And so I think the Economic Development Council has done a really good job these past 3 years of focusing on these relationships and being able to collect the information that's necessary to identify what available parcels of land are available for development. You'll find that a lot of projects that come in from the Kansas Department of Commerce and the Kansas City Area Development Council, some of them have available buildings, and obviously we have a lack of available buildings in our community. And a lot of the projects that come in require available buildings, and that's one of the areas that we try to focus on as well. So I'll just highlight this. The strategic initiative number 2 was business retention and expansion. And I know the mayor and several folks started with my group to attend some of the meetings with all of the major corporations in the community, the CEOs, and to find out what we as an organization could do to help them and to find out what their long-term range plans are. So that also helps us. If we can find out that a business has an option or is looking at trying to expand, whether it be here in DeSoto, we can start to work on that. If we find out that, you know, there's a couple other states that are in the running, then we can identify that and prepare a plan to make sure that they grow and expand here in DeSoto and keep the jobs here locally in our community. We've had several roundtable discussions. A lot of our quarterly membership meetings for the Economic Development Council is based and starts with that roundtable discussion. They're not being spoken to, they're at the table, they have a seat, and can provide that information. So I really think they've done a really good job of solidifying those relationships with the business community. Okay, next. So number 3 is quality of life. And I think this one is probably the most important, but that most of the citizens in the community see, but may not acquaint this to an economic development service. But we have to have a high quality of life in our community for not only the citizens, for our businesses, and for future businesses as well. And that starts with our relationship with the school district and making sure that they're thriving and have what they need, and working with the city on plans such as the future land use plan and the strategic plan, which is really what spurred our organizational growth. So it also talked about identifying the number of rooftops. So there's a saying that rooftops drive retail. So we needed to find out, you know, what opportunities are there. In the past 8 years, we've conducted a hotel study to see if there was any options for hotels, and we've got some positive information. Our retail really needs to have more population to attract some of the things that most people would consider. If you want a Starbucks, you've got to hit X number of population in a 3-mile radius. So there's certain things like that that we're able to glean from that in order to realistically attract a type of retail business, what does our demographics look like? So an interesting point, so based on, again, this is quite some time ago, but based on a $230,000 to $290,000 home value range, the average property tax paid per home to the city of DeSoto is about $817 annually. So we talked about if we're growing our population, even a moderate 2%, the new property tax generation would be just shy of $40,000 annually. So that helped us put an idea or a number with the population growth and what that means for the city. Strategic initiative number 4 was our own growth, and Katie is evidence of the fact that we're able to grow the organization to get more manpower so that we can function as a chamber of commerce, as the parent entity, and then also encourage growth for economic development so that we can be ahead and proactively working for growth that inevitably will come our way. So it talked about budgeting and personnel and the capital campaign for that. Next slide. So this just gives you the structure. We're small but mighty. I still function as the chamber president, but a majority of my time will be focused on economic development. And then we have our staff person, our administrative assistant, and then the new position with Katie as the vice president of the chamber. And hopefully at some point we can get a membership coordinator to help grow the organization. So we talked about our growth. Basically, you can see it as the umbrella. The parent entity is the chamber, and then the EDC operates under that. So there's one parent entity with economic development. We have an advisory committee, and it's based on businesses and the city as well. So this helps us identify economic development efforts and really find out from the businesses, because they're part of this group. What are they seeing in their business and how can we help advance that? Next slide. So we talked about restructuring. Just the activity reports that we've had are sent to the advisory committee. They have oversight, or the Chamber Board of Directors has oversight of the EDC advisory committee. And then we send out constant contact news blasts weekly to the Chamber membership. So there's always someone, a group involved, whether it be the Chamber Board of Directors, and that also includes the Economic Development Council Advisory Group. So then also, we hold stakeholder meetings as we need to with the businesses to let them know what our game plan is for the future based on their feedback. Next slide. Again, we talk about accountability. So Andy could not be with us tonight, but we have different Edward Jones, Johnson County Community College, Happy Valley Farms, Atmos Energy, Kudamaki, the city, TechWise, and then Merck. So it's a really diverse group of people. The membership meetings, we actually held ours today, are held monthly to keep our members updated on activity. And then the EDC Advisory Committee, that goes from landowners to Evergy to multifamily and residential builders to real estate professionals, engineers, pharmacists, building constructors, building developers, community college. It is in our USD 232 representative. So that's a really diverse group. And I want to make it known so that you're familiar that that EDC Advisory Committee is as it is. It's a committee. So there are no votes taken or actions taken at the advisory committee level. Any action that would be taken by the Board of Directors of the Chamber of Commerce. And then the EDC has quarterly membership meetings. And I've got copies to hand out to kind of show you what they receive. This is where the work kicks in. So some of the projects that the EDC works on. So I function through what's called an EcoDev tracker, and it keeps track of all of the projects that I work on. So you can see the project status snapshot. Currently, as of today, there's 15 projects that are active, and that doesn't mean just a flyby phone call or just a question. So these are active projects. The number of jobs are 13,432. So this means if we were to land today, all 15 jobs, we would be looking at north of 13,000 jobs created, $30 million in wages annually, and a capital investment of over $8 billion. Now, you have to take these numbers with a grain of salt, because some of the information that we get from these prospects, they may not have job numbers that are static. That is, they may be looking at 300 jobs now, but if the project were to land, they would be up to 600. The wages. Sometimes when we get information from a client, they haven't pinpointed the wages yet. A lot of that depends on what location that they decide at the end. So in the investment, oftentimes there's some projects that don't have a capital investment number identified yet. So these are all fluid, and it's only the going to get more as far as the investment and the wages and the job numbers. So of interest, since January 2021, the EDC has completed a request for information on a total of 32 projects, which averages one a week. And that may not seem like a lot, but a lot of these don't come in once a week. They'll come in, and Mike's familiar with these as well. We'll get about 24, 48 hours notice, lead time if we're fortunate. Oftentimes we'll get a week notice for this information, and that's the scariest part, because if they've given us a week, we're going to be working that whole week to get a various set of information. With those 32 projects, I may submit more than one site that's in the community. And some of these projects that we've worked on this year with a $1 billion, $8 billion plus capital investment, those reports are 70 plus pages long of demographic information, workforce information, salaries, incentives, options for them, specific questions to make sure that we have the infrastructure for them as well. So this is a really important piece that I think helps everybody kind of get an idea of actually what's going on. So the next slide, what are some of the projects that the EDC works on? if my eyes don't fail me, it shows 39% of the projects that we work on are industrial. And then we have 16% that are warehouse and distribution, and 29% is manufacturing. You'll see a small portion of that is retail, and a small portion is office. And so what you're seeing is, from looking at this graph, you're finding out that a majority of the projects that come in either to the EDC itself, via the Kansas Department of Commerce, or the Kansas City Area Development Council. That's ways that we get these projects. So if someone is looking and interested in the DeSoto area, these are, obviously you can tell from this chart that these are going to be larger businesses. So the next slide. Where do these projects come from? I just told you, sorry. Majority of these projects that we've seen come in from the Kansas Department of Commerce, followed by, actually some of the 33% have come through our offices, and then 17% from the Kansas City Area Development Council. Now this number is misleading because the Kansas Department of Commerce and the Kansas City Area Development Council work on projects at the same time. So it's whoever sends me the project first is what it gets assigned. So often, I would say 95% of the time, if we're working with Kansas Department of Commerce, if we're not competing with an area that's closely here, the Kansas City Area Development Council will participate, and they've been a great resource for us to provide some workforce data information that otherwise we would not have been able to do. So they're absolutely critical to our function. The next slide. Why haven't some of these projects landed in DeSoto? So you'll see that 44%, Mike, you're going to have to help me.
Building availability.
Building availability.
Yeah.
They come in and they need a 400,000 square foot building. They need a 200,000 square foot building. We've had some as high as 3 million square feet, as low as 10,000 square feet. So building availability is really one of the issues that we're going to have to take a look at as we start incorporating our new roadmap. 19% is insufficient infrastructure. So that means they may like the property, they may like the parcel, but we don't have the infrastructure to get to that site. 13% was land availability. And I almost, what I can see from this is it tells me that if we would have looked at this 3 to 5 years ago, this would have been entirely blue. But since we've identified available land and started incorporating some of our studies and started identifying that land availability has shrunk. I would assume that in the past couple of years you would have seen at least 60% land availability. Other items that we're seeing is demographics and trade area. Because there's so many businesses looking for jobs right now, it's hard to attract workforce. So we're starting to see that number grow and become more prevalent. Okay, next slide. Why haven't some of these projects landed again? So this gives you the square foot requests, and the numbers are astounding. So you can see 50% of all of these projects that have come through need 400,000 square feet plus buildings. So these are major businesses that are looking at our area. And we're not landing these projects because we do not have 400,000 square foot plus buildings. 15% are in that 200,000 to 400,000 square foot. And then next following the smaller businesses as well. But just 200,000 square foot buildings are large. And to see 50% of those projects come in at 400,000 square foot plus identifies the type of companies that we're trying to attract and that are looking at us. Next slide.
That's the last slide of that presentation.
That
Do you want to go on
is,
to the
okay.
next presentation?
Yeah, absolutely. So I stand for any questions that you have. It's really telling, and I hope to do this more frequently for you to share this information so that you can see exactly how we're doing. And Katie's going to hand out a copy of our quarterly membership meeting that was held in June, and I'll have some updates. But this will kind of give you an idea of some of the projects for the first 6 months of the year that we have worked on.
Any questions for Sarah from the council? We've got her here.
I might have to go through this.
Okay.
Okay. So the next slide talks about some of the announcements that we've had. Custom Foods, they're the frozen dough manufacturer in town. They've added a 20,000 square foot warehouse line to their building, and it has additional 10,000 of that additional 10,000 square feet for their operations. Their total capital investment was just under $1.5 million, and we were able to help them grow, and in order to get through their incentives programs, we help them with their sales tax exemptions that they get through the state of Kansas as well for the machinery and equipment. Carriage houses, this has even grown since June. So they have 20 units, and you can get anywhere from 450 square feet upwards of 1,100 square feet for the garage condominiums. And these are individual condominiums that people buy and they become owners. When this was done in June, Y9 was sold out, Building 10 just got released, and then they were identifying that they were releasing Building 11. We found out that they've already sold out of Building 10. They're leasing Building 11, and Building 12 now is being considered. So they've had massive growth in their area. We've had CJA Design Group, was an interior design firm. They located to Lexington Avenue, which is next to Bubble Cream, and they're an interior design company. The next one was O'Reilly Auto Parts. This was a partnership with Hike Properties and their Commerce Park development, and that total area that's seen shows $14 million of total area investment. And so we stay in contact with them to make sure that things are going well, and if they have anything that we can help them with, and any projects that we have would be a good fit for this location. Next slide. I'll just briefly go over some of these. So this we give out to our members, which are the businesses in the area, project names. And so what's important to know with this is when a project comes in through the Kansas City Area Development Council or the Kansas Department of Commerce, they will identify the project by a project name. They most likely do not know who the company is themselves. So we become familiar with the project based on their company name. So you can see there's Project Acura, was a food and beverage manufacturer. They wanted 500,000 to 750,000 square feet. We've been working with them. A multi-billion-dollar investment, large employer seeking 400 acres for their North American manufacturing plant. We're still working with them. Some of these projects can take upwards of 24 months for a company to make a decision, and obviously if millions and billions of dollars are in play, they're going to really kind of fine-tune it and make the best decisions for their company. Project Flint was a company that ultimately did not locate to DeSoto, but you can kind of see it's a construction company, manufacturing in the 400,000 again square foot. You can kind of see that prevalence here with that total number. Mike, the next page. So we'll get consultants that are looking at the Kansas City region, and we'll be contacted via the Kansas City Area Development Council to see if we have any options for them. This is a project and not a submittal, so this one doesn't count as an active project because they're in the very early stages. So they'll be preliminary identified until they decide they want information from our community. We've got development projects that are looking for cold area storage, planned back office, customer service centers. There's just a diverse area of folks that are looking, especially warehouse space. Next page. So again, a warehouse distribution we talked about, and this one was on the smaller scale, which is still big for a startup company that needs 2,500 to 3,000 square feet. Short term, 10,000 to 40,000 square feet. Long term. We had site selectors that come in that are looking for their clients, and a lot of these that are having buildings that are significantly large, they're going to have specific requirements for their areas, and docks are one of them. Okay, the next page. So you can see again all the projects that were coming in and what we're seeing. You'll also see when we were not successful and why. So Project Packard was an automotive retail that was had about a $40 million capital investment, and it had 350 employees. Since then, we were notified that we were not selected because their timing, we were a great location for them, but their timing was too quick for what we could have for them. So that's one of those that you can tell that had an interest and had a willingness to come here, just the timing did not work out. Next page. Again, Project Squid, we've had several food manufacturing, and this one is a liquid bottling capacity that would fall under that. Project South was, again, it was a 120 to 150 acre site, 1.8 million square foot facility. We were a finalist in our area, and we were the only site in the state of Kansas, and there's 3 to 4 sites in the state of Missouri. So I think it's really important to know that the available land that we are showing, we are one of the few in the state of Kansas that can attract those types of businesses. And the location of where that property is critical in order for Kansas to attract businesses and for us as well. Next page. Project Flavor. This one was a project that we've worked on well over a year and a half. It was a $650 million capital investment. We were a finalist, the only one in the state of Kansas. We were in the final 2 with another community, and we were not selected. But this would have had a significant economic impact to our community with their capital investment, the number of jobs that would be available for our citizens. That would have been a great project to have. We learned a lot from that project, and it's my opinion that a lot of the developers that were familiar with that project became familiar with DeSoto based on Project Flavor. Because right after we received the news on Flavor, we started getting calls of the developers who were interested in our community. So we showed very well, and it was a collective effort, and we all should know that we gave our all for that project. Next page. K10 Place. So working, something that you don't normally see in our Kansas Department of Commerce secretary had stated this as well in one of the Zoom meetings that we were in, that chambers and commerce don't normally focus on housing. But because of the activity and the need for housing, they've changed. We're going to have to look at housing, and we've done that with Arbor Ridge Development and some other projects that we've worked on to grow the housing. But we're having to look at this as the companies won't locate to the area if there's not homes for their employees. So this is something that's just, we've had to kind of adapt to the changing requirement. Next page. Okay, so we conducted a due diligence master plan for some of the properties. And in order to do this, we worked with our advisory committee, the Chamber Board of Directors, and then Evergy, who's our local energy provider, actually paid 50% grant for us to have this project. And so it was a due diligence and master plan for a 300 plus parcel acre, again, that we've submitted multiple times. I can tell you that having that document has been an immense benefit to our organization and to how successful we've been and able to attract the attention of a lot of these folks. So this actually gives me a document that tells me everything about that property with regards to infrastructure, and if it's in a floodplain, if there's any type of archaeological artifacts that have been on a property, anything that businesses need to know before they start throwing dirt out there is in that document. So it just has a wide variety of information that's in there. Next slide.
That's it.
Okay, so that's a lot of information in a short amount of time, and I'm sorry I didn't want to take too long, but we've absolutely been busy, and it's been an exciting time for our organization as we see these companies and watching DeSoto prosper in the development world.
Questions for Sarah from council? Yeah, I might jump in and maybe a couple questions and maybe a little bit of discussion for clarity. One of the things you mentioned that in terms of sizes and things that they're looking for is building size, and in DeSoto we don't have buildings. So I'm presuming, certainly of not of the size and scale that the projects have been looking for. So when you indicate a big chunk of them are lost because we don't have a building size, I presume you're not actually submitting on those that are looking for an existing building. So isn't it really more that the stat is probably skewed towards lack of land or lack of infrastructure as
Yeah.
opposed to lack of building? Because everything that's being submitted on is going to be build and suit.
Correct.
Or maybe speculative, but it's going to be new construction.
Yeah, so you'll see a lot of these projects come in. They're flexible. They'll say, look, we need 400,000 square foot building or greenfield development. So you'll see some of those that will come in and look for a certain square foot building. And that's some of those projects, then the available land in those numbers diminish because that sticks out. But there's definitely, they work hand in hand. A lot of these companies, they need a 400,000 square foot building, or they'll take greenfield development to actually build that building. So a lot of those that have come in have been that way.
Yeah, and so then with that greenfield development, you know, I think it's worth, I'm glad you pointed out about, you know, Evergy funding the study because as part of our community planning and then the EDC planning, it becomes that aspect of infrastructure and the time of infrastructure delivery that I'm going to guess is what you're categorizing into the slice of the pie that is infrastructure issues.
Right, and so you would see before we had this due diligence plan and an actual plan in place with the available land, you would have seen the infrastructure and the land be a higher percentage. Because we actually have a plan in place and are taking those steps, those numbers have diminished significantly. I would believe that in the past 2 years, those numbers would be drastically different, where you would see infrastructure and land as a higher percentage.
And so you said that Project Flavor was a bit of an inflection point, if you will, because it drew a lot of maybe notoriety or viability to the area for very large-scale projects. And that was 18 months ago, something to that effect. And so, you know, I've been on the advisory council for 3-ish years. You know, you gave the stats on projects that are currently open, but I think, you know, there has been consistent deal flow for the whole time that I've been on advisory council, which I think is you know, indicating that DeSoto has been in interest. So that interest is probably not going to decline. So having the ability to serve those is going to be important. So any observations about kind of how that volume has evolved over time?
Yeah, I mean, it's surprising. If you look at a community our size, we're very fortunate to have the types of businesses that we have here. These are national headquarters. But because it really starts with the council strategic plan and their focus on economic development and understanding that with all of the houses that we need, it puts a lot of the taxing on the residents. And so we're trying to bring in businesses so that ultimately the investment that's made here will be able to offset the residential taxes and things like that. So it's been the past week, I would say, honestly, 2004, 2008, when we started all of these studies, we hit a couple of sporadic projects that kind of gave us attention. But really within the past 3 to 5 years, you've started to see the change. And it's about the same time that the strategic plan came in. So we had a mission that we needed to go with, and then we had our roadmap as well. So we finally had a long-range plan, and we made those connections, and we can decide as a community what we want to see in our community. And if we didn't, then the growth is still coming our way. It's still coming, and there may be nothing that we can do to prevent it. So the Chamber Board of Directors wanted to make sure that we can do everything within our power to direct that growth based on not only our roadmap, but the governing body's strategic plan. We want to get the best businesses in here with the highest paying jobs, with a large number of opportunities for our community to be able to work and live in our community.
And if you mentioned headquarters and those kinds of things, if my math was right on your active projects, the average project's investment is about $500 million. So the kind of economic impact that could happen to the community, such as you mentioned, that can affect the tax base, is significant. One last simple question. On the EDC website, you list certain buildings and properties. I'm kind of curious, it's just kind of a little smattering. How do you choose what properties or buildings are listed on your website for the public?
So that's the location one information system that Councilman Hanemichael is referencing. So it actually just takes time. So I need all of these projects have been going on. So with that and the addition of Katie to handle some of the chamber functions, it's going to give me more time to really sit down with the map and figure out what's available, who's interested, because we won't put an available land on that map if the owner is not interested in selling the property. So we have to identify the landowner, talk with them, find out what their short-term and long-term goals are for the property, and then based on identifying through our due diligence where the infrastructure is going. So you wouldn't see a huge parcel of property that is out in a certain area if we couldn't have identified a way to get infrastructure to that site.
Awesome. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Well, thank you. We'll continue to stay busy, and we'll make sure that we do this on a more consistent basis, because this information is different than it was 6 months ago, and it's twice as newsworthy as it was 6 months ago. So we'll stay in contact with the council.
Thank you, Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, item 4B. Consider resolution of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds for Anderson Hill.
Yeah, Patrick, do you want to introduce this? I know we have Kevin Wimpy with Gilmore Bell is on the video conference. And so between the two of you, you can introduce the topic?
Sure.
All right.
And we have Dave and his counsel, Mr. Goff, in the audience as well. But as you've done with a number of projects in the past, what's before you this evening is a resolution where you would be indicating your intent to be willing to issue industrial revenue bonds, and in connection with that, authorize a tax abatement and issue a certificate that would allow the project to, for construction materials, to be free from sales tax. So we do need to hold a public hearing on this item, but you know, everything's laid out in your packet. There's a cost-benefit analysis prepared by Columbia Capital. That's required by statute. With that, I'll stand for any questions and allow Kevin Wimpy as well to weigh in on the project.
Okay. Questions for Patrick on the resolution? And seeing none, we'll move on then. Kevin?
Yeah, good evening, Mayor, Council. Nice to be with you all this evening virtually. Patrick, great job did a great job of teeing that up, so I don't have much to add. But I'll just procedurally, this is a process familiar to you all, where Patrick mentioned you'll open the public hearing and take public comment, and then close the public hearing. Then you'll consider the adoption of the resolution of intent, which again is an expression to ultimately issue industrial revenue bonds to grant 10-year property tax abatement for the project. I think there was a committee recommendation, and Patrick, Mike, I believe it was at 50% over the 10 years. And you have in your packet a letter from the applicant. I know the applicant, I believe, is present tonight. So the requested abatement level differs than what is in your packet pursuant to the recommendation of the committee. So with that, I'll pause and turn it to you all in the council chamber, and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Any questions for Kevin before we move to the next step? So, would we have Matt speak before, or just have Matt and Dave speak during the public hearing?
I think it's at your discretion. You can certainly invite them to speak at either time. Yeah, absolutely.
So our next step would either to be open the public hearing, or, so I guess Matt or Dave, I would offer the opportunity for you to address the council on anything you'd like to, and then we'll open the public hearing then after you.
So do you want to open the public hearing?
Do you want them permanent in the record, or?
Well, you know me. Either way.
Well, I was gonna give you an opportunity to state your case, and then we open so you could sway the public before,
okay, yes,
before we
I will.
open the
Do
public
my
hearing.
best. That'd be great. Okay, thank you, Mayor. Whoops, council. Nice to be back. I was a little bit worried with the parking out front, what was going on, so.
That was all for you, Dave.
Well, I was hoping not. Dave Anderson, I live at 9152 Sherwood Drive here in DeSoto, and the project that you're considering is a development that I've been thinking of for a number of years, probably over 10. I have a passion for, especially my community, but infill development in a smaller rural communities, rather than chasing the developments out further and further in infrastructure and the cost. I've been hunting for a piece of property. This property has been vacant for, I'm going to say 10, it may have been more. There were two houses where you see 2 and 3 that were there for 100 years, and they were tore down, and the property sold for development, and two local guys couldn't do that, or couldn't figure it out. Moved on to other developments. A man and his wife bought this property, and I've always had my eye on it, so I kept looking at it, and I decided to call them, and I purchased the property with the intention of subdividing it, which I have. I presented to the Planning Commission, I think in April, and then was encouraged by staff. We talked a little bit, and the IRB seemed to be an appropriate measure. And the reason that I'm requesting that is basically location. This is not where developers are trending to. I just have a passion for it, and I need some assistance to it. Thank you for the consideration. The 50%, I have offered, I guess, a counter offer. If you could help me on the front end of the project during stabilization, make it 100% for the first 4 years, 75, and then to the 50, because frankly, I sat on your side for quite a while, and this, I want it to be a benefit to our community. The project is, if you haven't been too familiar with it, I don't want to take a lot of time, but these are all 2 stories, 3 bedrooms, single car garage. I will say that Planning Commissioner Linda Lane thought the elevations were gorgeous, and I agree. There's a lot of character in them. You know, I think I'll state this right, Mike, but you can correct me. I think I'm 100 feet from the line of downtown. I think the downtown incentive is always the front buildings north and south of the road. I lie 100 feet from that line. You had to draw a line somewhere, so, but I'm close. And the property just north of me is subject to redevelopment, and you could almost call it blight in the city owns. So the location is difficult, as any infill would be, but I think investing $1.3 million, this thing will be a little over $1.3 million in the downtown area is what our community needs, and I put together investors. I'm not doing this by myself. The city tax abatement's important. It's a but-for deal because the return at the current cost of construction it's 1%, so nobody would do that. This makes it very viable, and I'd like your comments if you have any before you decide, but that's my hope, that you give me 4 years, front end 100%, 75 in the fifth, and then I'll the 50 after that.
Okay.
You ready? Questions?
So you're planning to hold these for rental units then?
Yes, yeah, yes, sir. The law for an IRB, it has to be for rent.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, not for sale.
Any questions from council? No? All right.
What kind of rent?
The rent?
Yeah, what kind of
the
rent are you looking? I mean, that's one thing that's really hard when I'm asked to do something like this, and yet I don't really know anything about, except for what you're paying for it.
Sure,
But
sure.
obviously what you're paying for it's gonna be worth a lot more than that. I mean, so it's
Well,
kind of getting an
that would be
idea
nice
of what.
if it was. The rental rate will be $1,850 a month. That's our projection. And that's based on not an independent, but our own market study of what's going on now with the 2 bedrooms rent for, with a garage at a 10, and their square footage, and the rentals, 4 rentals that Don Parr had. There's 4 duplexes in Harper Ridge. And the square foot rent here would be $1.23, which is reasonable if you're in the market and understanding it. But it could be on the top end. I'm hoping we're right in there. And there is a little bit of demand for the product, but this location is, I'm positive about it, but we'll see. Did I answer your question?
Anyone else?
No, I'll just make the comment. I think it would be great to add some multifamily, especially across from the stuff that we've been talking about of our area. Looks like it would tie in well with that. So,
Okay.
any comment?
I will officially open the public hearing then, right now, if we're all good with that, and then we'll take comments on the public hearing part. Anyone wish to comment during the public hearing? He's got to make his money sometime.
Even ask permission, that's all.
Mayor, I don't like public hearings where no one speaks. Thank you for indulging me. My name is Matt Goff. I'm an attorney with Barber Emerson Law Firm in Lawrence. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. I really only just want to make one point because I think everything else has been covered. The cost-benefit analysis that you have in your packet ran the tax abatement 3 ways. It ran it at 100%, 75%, and 50%. What the applicant's proposing is a little bit of a blend, but under each of those 3 scenarios, there was a net present benefit to the city. And since that's a study that's required by statute and you have it, we did mention that it's there, I just thought I'd add one little layer of detail on top of it. And that's all I've got. So
Okay.
I'll stand for questions.
All right. Any questions for Matt?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. So I'll just make a couple of my comments and observations. I think it's been more like 20 years probably that those have sat empty since those houses were gone. If it was an easy nut to crack, I think with the boom that we've had, we would have already seen it. So there's something more. If we want to see something there, I think there's something. I think there's a little bit of something that's needed to make it happen. That's my opinion. So I don't. I understand the need for the request, but I was part of the committee that recommended 100% is a pretty big ask. I mean, and so I was part of that committee that recommended the 50%. I don't know what the difference over the term of the 10 years would be between the blended rate and the 50 that we were recommending. I mean, honestly, on it's a small project, so it's probably a really, in the big picture, a small number of benefit or gain to the community and to the taxing entities. But I think that's probably all I've got. So I will ask for anyone else if they would like to make comments or.
Couple questions. What's the current incentive policy for the area as it is, and what's the incentive policy if he was 100 feet further in the downtown district?
Yeah, good question. So there's, our incentive policy, defines those areas. He's not in any area, so there's really not a policy to incent really anything, other than it is in the neighborhood improvement district. And that's sort of an overlay that kind of goes over the whole older downtown area that allows administrative approval of some building permit fee waivers, half the permit fees and some tap fees. So he is in that incentive area, but he's not in one of the other particular ones. The downtown area, I'd have to look it up. I can look it up real quick if you give me just a second, because it is part of that policy.
Play the Jeopardy song while you're looking
Yeah.
at it.
Or ask another question.
Yeah. No, it's a good question.
Yeah.
I'm gonna want to know the answer now.
So
Dave, oh, I'm sorry, you found it?
well, I did. So it'd be in incentive area number 1, and the matrix.
Yeah, because while you're looking that up, I mean, there's also the intangibles of taking property that was blighted, torn down, sits vacant, and in that whole downtown kind of area, an old town area, seeing revitalization.
Right. Important to note that the incentive matrix that I have pulled up here, it goes over all of the potential incentives. So there's benefit districts, TIF districts, a possibility. Just the straight tax abatement, constitutional tax abatement, would be 100% of property taxes up to 10 years, and then the issuance of IRBs that would also be that would be applicable.
So if he was 100 feet further in, under our policy, he'd be looking at possibly 100%?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah.
Which, in my opinion, makes the current compromised ask between the 50 and the 100 very reasonable.
Right. Yeah, also important to note, yeah, it's not just a geographical. So the way we've targeted these are that we have targeted industries associated with the areas. Mm-hmm. And so with the downtown, it does have a component of resident, because the thought is just that for that 2 block, so it's mostly retail, commercial, office type uses, but it does contemplate some residential uses in that as well. So.
We've seen a lot of interest in the downtown area with some of the blighted properties, such as the burned out house, of seeing things taken care of in that area that may be just outside of that block.
Yeah, we've worked on some stuff there. Yep. Okay.
You done? Good. Kevin?
Well, I was just gonna ask what, because I'm in favor of the proposal that he recommended, but what did that average out over the 10 years?
I think 72 and a half, something like that. Did you do it, Rob?
That's a rough math. Thank you.
Any questions? Danny, anything?
Yeah, I feel I don't begrudge Dave for asking for the 100%. I understand that. I know the prices of materials and have went up, and I would like to see help on that. I don't feel comfortable with the 100% or 10 years, either one. At the housing market today, houses are being sold before they're built, and they're selling like hotcakes, and so are duplexes and stuff too. I point that out, and I know that we haven't really had incentives on Mr. Parr or Joe Roy and those kind of things. This is a large tax abatement here that we're looking at. So I would really like to help. I would like to see the amount and the time limit down more if we wanted to go that way as far as the council, but that's my feelings. But it's a hot market right now, and it's like I said, you could sell these things quick before they're even built now. And the interest rates are really, really good. A lot of people are refinancing and redoing things, and, you know, we've got to do the right thing. And I like Dave's idea. I like the looks of it. And I would love to help. I just want to feel more comfortable about time and amounts. So, and that's something that we're going to be talking about tonight. So that's my feeling.
Okay. Anything from this side? Kevin, Lori?
At first, I was really pretty hesitant about it just because I'm just not quite sure about the big tax abatements for 3 duplexes. Basically, it seems like it's not the right place to be using the tax abatement. But, you know, it is filling in a place where I think it probably is going to be, I'm not sure why it's difficult to, why something hasn't got in there. I guess I'm not quite sure I understand all the difficult part, what you're talking about, other than surrounding area and surrounding houses and what's there and putting something bigger and fancier. If it was going to be an individual trying to build there, it just doesn't fit in. So I guess it's, you know, something of that line. So truthfully, Dave, I was kind of not really for it at all. Willing to do the 50%. I'm not totally against increasing that because I'm not wanting to stop the project either. So I am willing to support it and go with it. I guess I just, for future, would like to understand where we, as a council, start and stop when it comes to residential properties that are being abated. You know, I know we did the big apartment complexes, and I remember when we did that, people were throwing fits about it because it's residential. You don't do that. And so now, no, we're doing 3 duplexes and asking to do the same thing. And so that's, you know, I get it's in an area that is fill-in. I get it's in the downtown area. I do think you won't have any trouble getting $1,800.50 or $850 for a garage and 3 bedrooms. I mean, that doesn't seem outrageous at all to me. Where it's at, you know, I don't know that it's in a better or worse location than anywhere the apartments or, you know, the amenities or anything else. So, but as I said, I want the project to work. I want it to happen. I think it has positive effect in DeSoto. But I just think that we as a council need to kind of think about, you know, how far and how many, and, you know, at what limits, you know, when do we do it or not do it. But that's it.
Thank you.
As long as everybody's chiming in.
Chime in,
I might
please,
as well.
please do.
Yeah, you know, I support your comment of, you know, do something to try to stimulate something on the north side of 83rd Street in the residential area. So, you know, I support some form of participation, if you will, here. I hadn't really thought of it from Rob's perspective of it's the compromise between 0 and 100% by 100 feet, you know, so the 50% kind of has some meaning. But I'm with Lori in that we looked at, you know, we really looked hard at the whole incentive plan and what we were trying to accomplish for the community. I think this could help to, if it does help to cause something to be viable, then it creates a little different product and it can stimulate some new construction. So I think it's reasonable. I think where I come from, when you look at tax abatement type projects and when they're typically applied to commercial rather than rental residential, you've also got the spinoff of job creation, potentially sales tax revenue generation, whereas residential doesn't have any other really benefit other than maybe helping to cause some other growth or some, you know, some additional residents. And probably in our community, it's just creating a housing choice rather than attracting people into town. It's just creating a housing choice. You know, Danny, your point well taken about, you know, the housing market. You know, I agree with Lori that it's probably going to be viable. You know, yeah, Joe Roy's project took a little bit to get off the ground, but then it went like wildfire, you know, without any support, and it is in the older part of town. So I'm in favor of doing something here. I think if we look at anything beyond the 50%, I'd have to start asking questions about how much does any additional abatement actually translate into rent rate savings, and we don't have that data. I would want to see it, calculated as, this is going to be passed on to the resident, not just padding the margin on the project a little bit. And I understand, Dave, it's probably a tight project, but I would want to know that anything else got passed on in rent rate and somehow. And I don't know that we have that information. So that's my thought.
Thank you. So
Joe Roy was eligible for some, he just
Yeah,
asked
because
for it.
we did his,
I don't think we always need to bring Joe Roy's project up every time we talk about another one. I just don't think it has anything to do with this, and I'd rather that we don't bring it up every time.
Yeah, I'm just saying there was some eligibility there.
that he didn't take advantage of
yes.
Yeah.
for something.
Yeah, $1.23 for a finished product, and today to frame in and cost. I think that's cheap, for a finished product.
If I could just,
Turnkey.
Certainly, if you want to,
so.
you have to go back to the mic, Dave, so that our audience out in the outer worlds can hear you. Sorry.
To Commissioner Hono, or Councilman Michael, our rents, the model is like 2% in an increase. So we're trying to hold it down. Right now, that's below inflation. So that model works. So in a way, the incentives, if we're not paying tax, are shuffling the numbers so that the increase in rents are not drastic. Does that make sense? A little bit. And
It's not bringing down the upfront rent.
no, but if I can't rent them, I mean, I'll have that room to maneuver. The other item, and I make no bones about it, I've been attracting investors to come to DeSoto that would not otherwise look here. Maybe one is from the community. The rest are all outside. And Councilwoman Lori, to your question, and I just want to throw this out there in the big picture. DeSoto has a lot of housing that is past its useful life. And paint and caulk are continually being put on these properties, and properties are going like crazy, as you mentioned, Danny. And these people, they're just buying them off left and right. Now, it does have some affordability because you're buying 100. I looked at the house on the corner of the old Taylor house. It's if you haven't, you should go in. The trim in there is still there, all of it, and it's really cool. But look at the outside. I have tried every which way to figure out how to save it. It really ought to be torn down. The investment that I'm putting in is brand new, and if it has sat there for 20 years, then in 10 years, well, because we're going to negotiate and you'll get 50 at least, it's going to kick in way before that. I think you really should look differently at these, even though it's 3 duplexes, as you said, it kind of sounds silly, but preserve our community, the old town park. I think you got to really kind of think out of the box. It doesn't match anything in the market. That's because I've been studying small towns like this. I'd love to do this. The investors are up for it every year. So if I could find another lot this size, I'd do it again.
What are the energy efficiencies of what's the building envelope like in the?
Well, it'll have to meet the code, and I think we've adopted 2018.
Yeah, 18.
Yeah. There's a big energy code, yeah. So specifically, it'll have to meet R factors that are in the code. Is that
Yeah,
the question?
pretty much. I mean, yeah. So
It's either 2x6 or 2x4 with outer grading.
Yeah, this is a 2x4. Yeah.
The
So
increased
just to
R
answer a
value.
few of your questions or clarify maybe. Thank you.
And that also took in place the testing price, because that was what the benefit was.
So we have a couple options before us. If someone wanted to offer an alternate proposal to what we have. We could either have a motion to accept what we have, or we could throw it out. We could make a motion to accept what we have, or we could make a motion to come up with some alternate plan.
I would just say, I don't think the dollar amounts are a loss to the city to go with what Dave has counter-asked us. So, yeah, to go with 100 for 4 years and the 75 for a year and 50%, I'd be all right with that. Only, like I said, because I know the dollar amounts to us aren't, it's not hurting us. It's the whole project is helping us. So, and if that's what it's taking him to make it a doable project, I'm sure it's not really. I'm sure we could go down a little bit lower on it, and it would still work. I'm okay with it, and I think Rob probably is going to say the same.
Yeah, because, I mean, even if you look in the downtown, I'm sorry, are you done?
Yeah, might as well be. That's fine.
Didn't mean to. Downtown, seeing the renovation of like Reach and KJ's, when you start seeing some of the fresh renovation happening, that helps encourage more. I didn't mean to.
Well, and this will eventually bring tax revenue to a couple of those a month.
I think the point Lori made earlier is well taken, though. We need to understand why we need to do an abatement here and why we don't at the next big greenfield residential project. Be prepared to answer that question or understand why we're doing what we're doing.
Well, my feeling on that would be, it's a stimulus, right? Or it's to get something started, but because we do run the risk of anybody, the next person coming along saying, well, hey, I want to build another unit back here that's going to be a rental, and have we created a trend or an expectation, right? And does 100 feet become 200? Does that constantly get encroached upon? But to stimulate something happening there, I can be for it. I would not be receptive to it becoming a trend.
I think, I don't know if anybody's ready to make a motion, or I think I know where three folks are pretty good. If someone wanted to make a motion to that, I would.
Since it's a resolution, you can just direct staff
to amend the resolution.
Change the documents up, right?
Yeah. So the resolution would.
I gotta find.
Still be the same number.
Oh, it's still 1057. Hasn't changed a bit. It's right there. I'll make a motion, then we approve resolution 1057 with making changes on the percentage of tax abatement to 100% for the first 4 years, 75% for the 5th year, and 50% for the last 5 years.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion of the motion? Roll call, please.
Lane,
No.
Daniels,
Yes.
Carmichael,
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
Murdoch.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, guys, for the discussion. Danny's good topics, all for the future. Thanks.
Item C, discuss Evergy project on 91st Street.
Yes, council, I'll introduce this one. Really no action needs to be taken, but we would like make you aware of the situation and like some feedback as well. Yes.
Patrick, do I need to excuse myself from this until we do it?
Yeah, you would.
Pat,
All
can you
right.
turn your mic on? I don't think that's on.
I heard, it sounded like it was on when we drug it across the table.
Oh, okay.
Didn't it?
There we go.
He just needs to use it, he needs to talk into it. That's
Well, I was
all.
trying to get his attention.
Yeah.
And I just figured out what it was, so.
Yeah, no, thank you, Kevin, and, yes, that would
So,
be
just show that
appropriate.
I'm leaving.
All right, yep. The clerk will note that Councilman Ritter has left the meeting. All right.
Okay. Yeah, so we were notified about a month ago from Dante McGrew, who is the liaison from Evergy that works with us on a high level on stuff like this, that Evergy is planning a distribution main project that'll actually connect to the new substation they're building at along Sunflower Road just south of K10. It'll connect to that substation and run up Sunflower and then turn east down 91st Street. And their intent is to put that distribution main overhead. And their design group wanted him to reach out to us because they went out there and noticed a really nice looking new road with sidewalks and nice pretty green grass. And, thought that there might be some desire on the council to have that distribution main go underground. So he reached out to us, and we reviewed our franchise agreement, and Patrick and I both independently and together came to the conclusion that we think that Evergy is already required to place that underground within the city right-of-way just based on the terms of the franchise agreement. And we've highlighted those for you in your staff report. We can go over those in detail if you want. Dante ran that, you took that feedback and got with his group, and his contention is that their reading of the franchise agreement and their practice in other communities throughout the region in Kansas is that the rules and regulations adopted by the Kansas Corporation Commission actually apply here and don't require them to go underground anywhere when they're using the public rights-of-way, and that those rules and regulations supersede ours. We disagree with that, and today, we haven't heard from them this week, but he was going to get further input from their legal team to really come to some consensus on that. Evidently, just talking to Dante, that is their practice in other jurisdictions. Patrick reached out to other jurisdictions with similar franchise agreements with Evergy. Some have had this discussion and some have not. I think it was it Overland Park that has acquiesced to Evergy's interpretation of that, Patrick? I can't remember. I'm sorry, it was Olathe. But others that have not, and so they're all kind of interested about to hear about the conclusion here. So what we'd like to hear from the council, really, I kind of just have two questions there. First of all, do you guys care if it's overhead along the new section of 91st Street? I'd point out, and Dante did, that it's overhead along the older section. That's the picture there. This is just from Google Earth. I think it's looking east, somewhere in front of the high school or the USD admin building. You can see the power poles on the north side of the street there. If it's important to you, and then we find out later that there is some state law that supersedes this, and in fact they are right. What they're saying is that they'll put it underground, but they'll expect us to pay the difference in construction costs, which is estimated at $400,000 currently. Would you be willing in that instance to pay any or all of that to keep that new road segment looking the way it does today? So that's essentially what we're here to talk about, and we'll answer any questions you might have. Patrick, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
One thing, and that would be, this underground requirement applies to all of our franchise utilities. Now, the way that our code reads is if obviously something loses its utility by placing it underground, like wireless, that doesn't have to, but it's not, because we have to be competitively neutral with all of our franchisees and all of the entities using the right-of-way. It's not as easy as saying, okay, look, we're not going to impose this on this particular utility, because that the next utility that comes along, we would have to extend that same accommodation to them. So I think we would really have to sit down and try to find a way to figure out how to not enforce this provision of our right-of-way regulations. And I don't you know, I think it's pretty clear that it is a requirement, similar to, you know, if we had a requirement, you gotta bury, you know, gas lines, you know, 10 feet instead of 8 feet. That's just part of using the city right of way. It's just a requirement. And here, right, you know, we have a requirement that everything goes underground, and that's been a requirement since before the last franchise was entered into with Evergy. And we've been putting that in all of our franchise agreements, that you have to comply with the city's right-of-way regulations. So we feel pretty comfortable that it is required. So
My preference is that it be underground, but I don't know that it's a $400,000 preference. You know, I think there's a lot of trails or streets or some other stuff we can do with $400,000 before we would spend it underground a half a mile of Evergy distribution line.
So is this something they've been complying with up until this point? Or is,
It's a really good question. I was trying to rack my brain to think, has there been any like new distribution mains that they've constructed since I've been here that would be analogous to this? And I can't really think of any. They've reconstructed distribution mains up Lexington, completely redone them from overhead, and they've remained overhead before. But I really can't think of an instance. Of course, new subdivisions, when they go in, they're all underground, but that's easy because the subdivider, the developer pays the upcharge, and Evergy puts them in like, that's how those get done.
but the ones that have been reconstructed have gone back above?
Reconstructions have remained above, yeah. Our recent Roundabout project, they decided to go underground for that. Just because it was just gonna be easier, I think logistically for them. We didn't pay any upcharge for that.
It was because of anchors or something.
Yeah, and we didn't say you have to put it underground. So that topic never came up with the Roundabout project. I just can't think of one that's been done, that's a new route for them. The other thing I did want to point out is that the same project, they're thinking, now they haven't mentioned this, but I've come to find out in conversations with Merck this week, they're also planning a similar route that keeps going up Sunflower Road to 87th Street and then turns east down 87th Street to Merck's entrance, which, you know, it's shown on this map. So
Is not there a substation, future substation out there?
yeah, that's what they're tying to, and that's down south of K10 on Sunflower Road. So they're kind of planning both routes, and I haven't heard anything about the one up that keeps going up Sunflower and turn down 87th. I imagine the same.
Are there poles running above ground going up that direction?
On 87?
A7th?
Let me look.
Yeah.
So the 87th would be in addition to this one?
Yeah.
In the future, apparently.
I think pretty quickly in the future.
We haven't seen any.
But the
No one's mentioned
91st could
anything.
potentially be precedent for,
Yeah, there is some overhead. Looks like along
I
the
have
south
a
side.
question, how big is this new subline gonna be? Is this going to be a massive, high kilowatt usage type thing right over a sidewalk? And is this gonna be like, coming across Cedar Creek and down through there, going to the substation over there?
I
where we
assumed it
have-
was similar to what's up or east of it on 90. I didn't envision now, yeah, so if it's bigger than that, I would have a misconception of what they're proposing.
Well, and
Yeah,
that's
I
what I
would
was
too,
wondering
yeah.
too, given that it is like, I presume it was tying in the new substation. So my presumption is it would look a lot more like the
95th Street?
Yes,
Yeah.
the transmission line down 95th, which has transmission and then distribution below it, as opposed to this, which is just
Yeah.
distribution.
Yeah,
That would be my thought, is
That
it's gonna
would
look more
be-
like 95th Street.
yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, I haven't seen details on it, so I can't, but I would make the same assumptions. So here's
And it's on both sides of the, it's
Yeah,
on
boy,
both sides of the
ouch.
road on 95th.
Mm-hmm.
don't think it wouldn't be on both sides.
No, it wouldn't be on both,
It might
but,
look a lot like
because one of them
this.
peels off, but,
Yep.
you know, it has distribution, you know, and then a secondary below it as you go farther to the,
Yeah.
as you keep going west,
It's,
the distribution ends up.
Where is that at, Mike?
This is on 95th.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's 95th.
Go to the street view up there
Yeah.
on 95th, but just on the west side of Kill Creek. Yeah, there.
So there's
Yeah, and spin around and you'll see how they come together and it probably is gonna look more like
there
that.
we go.
Mm-hmm.
Which was, a lot of that was just reconstructed.
That was it was reconstructed.
I can't say whether they're
Yeah,
planning
just in
that.
terms of what the aesthetic might be.
Mhm.
But, there's sidewalks under stuff like that all the time. My original thought looking at this, because I agree, it'd be great to have it underground, but I'd rather build sewer for $400,000.
Right.
So, but the primary beneficiary of the aesthetic is Merck.
Work.
100%. So might Merck be interested
Right.
in participating to have it underground?
Well, it'd be probably Merck and maybe even county with their park not having all the lines running in front of it too.
Yeah, for the piece on Sunflower, yeah.
Because everybody's gonna get off on, take
Although I
91st
doubt
over
the
to
county-
Lexington Lake.
Yeah, I doubt the county will chime in, but Merck owns both sides of the road. Might they be interested in?
And I just wanted to clarify my comments from the standpoint of, I'm not indicating the city has to, I'm just saying clearly on the books, this would be a cost of,
Yeah.
business for them, for Evergy using our right of way. So.
Correct.
Um,
So who would resolve the difference of opinion of the KCC rules versus the city franchise? Is that Attorney General or court?
I don't think there is any the rules with the KCC apply to customers, not,
But isn't
we're a
that what they're-
regulatory body, so,
But isn't that what they're saying overrides our franchise agreement?
well, they're trying to, but I don't think there's, the last I talked to Dante, that's what I said, because he's really been making lots of phone calls, you can tell this is a big deal for him, and so, but
Well,
the
they
things
took
that
the-
he said hasn't, that's why I said, look, if you've got a legal counsel, then, have your legal counsel call me, and I'm open to, if there's a good argument to say you're not on the hook for this, then, we'll listen to it for sure, but
Well,
that
didn't-
call has never come.
Did they took all the franchise agreements out of the Kansas Corporation Commission, did they not? It's not anything to do with that anymore.
Well, not on electric, but cable,
That was on
is
communications.
the KCC administers those. So, no, at the KCC, Evergy, in order to justify their rates, they have to submit a bunch of information as to, and that's one of the things that if they're gonna go underground for their customer, like for example, if you were having, something ran across your property, they would charge you an upcharge if you wanted an underground as opposed to overhead.
Okay.
Our right-of-way regulations doesn't regulate on private property, it's just in the city right-of-way.
So the city could not issue them an encroachment permit and they'd have to go get private right of way?
Right, they have to get a right-of-way permit before they can do anything in that right-of-way, so that would be my thought, we won't give them
A permit and they'll have to go buy easements.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they could put it overhead, if they have private easement, that's their business, they can do that.
Interesting. Okay.
We thought it was interesting too, so we thought we should get some feedback from you all before it goes much further.
Well, I agree that we don't want to spend $400,000 on this, but I also think that we need to give Patrick time to kind of keep working on this and stick to what we feel is legally where we stand on this and not just get like shoved under the carpet and made to do it just because that's what they are trying to tell us. So I say we fight hard and keep at it, just if nothing else, just to be
I agree.
not let them know we're not just going to get shoved aside on things. And this is important enough as a precedent for anything else that's happening. I mean, we've got a lot of possible future infrastructure issues coming up, and we don't want to start with something that isn't the way our code is and where we stand on it. So that's how I would say on it.
Okay.
I was gonna say, from everything you've described, we are on solid ground to say, very solid ground to say, this is something you need to do. So I think all of us would rather see it underground. It's kind of, while it's Warmark property, there's a lot of people from outside the city that go to Lexington Lake. And so they're still driving through that corridor. Is not an entry to our city, but a main area of our city. So I'd say, agreeing with Lori, give Patrick time to keep working through it, because it sounds like, from everything we've heard, it's really their responsibility to go underground. And then if we have to pay, we can bring up discussion and go from there, but it doesn't sound like there should be that need.
Is that all you need on that, Mike?
I think it is, yeah. You'll likely hear more, if nothing else. Then
Hold your ground, stand your ground.
That's right. Okay, well, thank you for that.
Okay, we will note that Councilman Ritter has rejoined the meeting, and we'll move on to item 4D, consider engineering services agreement with George Butler Associates for well field rehabilitation design.
Yes, Council, thank you. On the video conference this evening, we have Charles McAllister and Colin Stalter with GBA. Thanks, guys, for hanging in there with us. They have put together a scope and fee that would help us design complete rehabilitations of all 6 wells that feed raw water to the water treatment plant. Increasingly, we've noticed over the course of really about 18 months, but really the last 6 months, with our wells, we have a well maintenance agreement with a company that comes in and treats those wells. What happens is, as you pull water out of the aquifer, calcium buildup and iron buildup occurs on the well screens, but also in the stratum of the aquifer, gravel and sands just outside of the well. That builds up, and periodically you have to treat that with either carbon dioxide or acid to break those deposits down so that the well can get water that it needs to pump. Increasingly over the last 12 months or so, those treatments have become less and less effective, and we've needed to do them more and more often. And some wells are better than others. But of the 6 wells that we have, all are to some degree, their efficiency is waning. Particularly that we've identified 2 of them that are about 1/3 the capacity that they really should be. As you know, these wells were originally drilled in the Army in the 1940s. They drilled, originally it was a 24-inch casing pipe. At the bottom of that casing pipe, there's a big screen, and there's a pump down there that pumps the water out. Sometime in the 80s, the Army came in, and because the casing pipe and screen were deteriorating, they put a smaller casing pipe inside and new screens inside of that, so the screens are smaller than they were originally. So just by default, that kind of limits their capacity. So they did that on on 5 of the 6 wells. Also in the mid-80s, one of our wells, they actually did completely re-drill. So it's got a nice, a larger casing. What we really need to happen now is we really need to re-drill those wells. And the common practice on a well like this, the aquifer's still good. We know we've got a lot of history with the aquifer on both sides of the river. We know it's still good. We know how deep the layers are. We know the yields that are involved there. Just our experience with our own wells, with city wells, with other geotechnical experience we have in the area. Just standard issue, common practice when a well gets this way is you move over some distance, 50 or 100 feet, drill a new well. It's in the same aquifer, it's in the same water. You can expect the similar type yields to redevelop. So that's what we'd like to do, implement that sort of a program. We have a time crunch. Last year during the peak summer months, all of these wells the capacity was limited such that we had to run the plant 18 to 20 hours a day to meet the peak demand that we have. And over the summer, it got up to around 1.4 MGD peak demand. We don't want to go into next summer without an increased capacity situation. So what we'd like to do now is completely rehab 2 of the wells. So the plan would be, and I think, I don't know if you're all familiar, but the well field down there, if you go up to a well site, there's a chain link fence around about an acre of property, and there's this big concrete monolith structure that sits up about 15 feet in the air, and then there's this wooden building on top of that. The pump controls and everything are sitting in that building, and it has to be that high because it's above the floodplain elevation. So the controls are there, but the pumps are down in the well. The rehab plan would be to demolish that, cap the well, move over 50 or 100 feet, still within the fence area, drill a new well with a new casing, new screens, put new pumps down there. And then for the new control components, we wouldn't build a great big concrete monolithic structure. We'd have some sort of a pole type structure that gets the controls above the floodplain elevation with the control components up there that are housed in watertight enclosures, maybe with a roof, maybe not a roof, we still don't know. But doing it just simplifies the whole aspect of them, and would provide essentially a brand new well. We think it's important to get this design work done just because of some of the economic development opportunities that Sarah's been talking about. Some of those have massive water supply needs. We would need to implement something like this at that time anyway. So we'd like to proceed with the design, go ahead and rehab 2 of the wells, maybe in time, hopefully in time for the peak production season of the summer next year. And then at that point, within the context of our CIP plan, schedule the rework of the other 4 wells. That's the general intent, and so that's the scope and fee that you have attached to your staff report there. This map here, Exhibit A, just a diagram of where our wells are. Originally, the Army had 12 wells. There's 6 on the south side of the river and 6 on the north side. We have ownership of 6 of those, 3 on the south, 3 on the north, and I've labeled them here. We just call them well 3, 4, 6, 8, 9, and 10. Those would be the ones that we plan on rehabbing. From a capacity standpoint, I did put a little paragraph in here. You know, the plant itself is capable of about 4 million gallons a day as it currently sits. We do, on average, average is less than about 1 million. It's around 800,000 gallons of water a day on average. In the summertime, it peaks around 1.3 million gallons a day. If we rehab all these wells, the plan would be to have a peak capacity that would essentially match the treatment plant. Actually, if we rehab all 6 of these, we think the peak would be around 5 million gallons a day, so which is about 5 times our current demand. If we had an economic user, a company come in somewhere that needs 5 million gallons of water a day, obviously we'll be out there drilling new wells, right? But that's a whole new world. So I think this plan would bring our raw water capacity up in line with the capacity of the treatment plant and set us up well for, you know, the types of opportunities that we're seeing coming. The scope and fee is arranged such that we can use a lot of the work that's done now on these 2 is transferable to the other 4. So, you know, in the future we'll be able to use a lot of what we do now in the future. The proposed fee is a hourly not to exceed $72,330, and I would propose that we use COVID Relief Act funding. We got $493,000 of that funding this year. We'll receive another $490,000 next year, approaching $1 million in that funding. Our intent is to work that funding into the 5-year CIP overhaul. It is obligated, it's restricted in its use to water and sewer improvements, infrastructure improvement, and broadband, but for our purposes, primarily water and sewer. So if you're comfortable with that recommendation, if you could make a motion authorizing the mayor to sign the agreement and that not to exceed amount. Colin and Charles are here on the line for any questions you might have of them, and I'll stop there, Mayor. Thank
Thank you, Mike. Any questions for Charles, Colin, or Mike? I think we should make Charles or Colin speak since they joined the meeting.
So just to clarify, this is going to be like the plan for just 2 of them. So when we do the other 4, they'll take this and revise it. There's still going to be additional
There will be additional
work done when we do the other ones.
Yeah, but not nearly as much. A lot of the specs and design are transferable. So, but there will be. This isn't all 6, right?
Mike, does this scope of work include the testing of those shacks that are at the top of those for asbestos and things of that nature?
Yeah, maybe you turn that question over to Colin or Charles about
It does not include that. We were going to put the bid package together in a way to require the contractor to do the testing, because when we were out there at the sites, we did notice that there is asbestos on those current structures, as existing structures.
Yeah, I noticed that as well, that's why I asked. Thank you.
Yep. And like Mike said, this is kind of laying the groundwork for the future wells. They're all going to be similar designs other than well number 4, which has a different type of structure that was re-drilled in the 80s. But as Mike has on the screen, this is kind of a concept that we put together showing what we're planning for those 2 high priority well sites, well number 6 and well number 9.
And then the time frame, you want to get the work done as soon as possible. So right now, this is 6 months out to getting bids. And how long do you anticipate then it would be after that, as far as before the work is actually done? How much time will it take to do the work, I guess, is my...
So when we put these bid packages together, one thing that we could do is have the contractor focus on a site and get that site up and running and do the testing on that specific site, so that you have a new well and can reach those capacities that Mike was talking about, and then move on to the next well, so that you can at least have one of those wells up and running before the peak demands of the summer. But I would estimate it would probably be close to, I don't know, six months to have both of them completely redone.
Is that your design and construction time, is that what you're saying, or is that you just
That's just construction time.
Because that pretty much puts it towards the end of summer.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, that's not really getting us, unless we can get these guys to move a little quicker on their end. No comment.
Are we going to have to change any of the control apparatus? I mean, besides keeping it up to deal, are we going to have to invest in new?
Yeah, mostly. There's some a SCADA system, remote.
Well, to turn on and off remotely.
That we can reuse, but most of the controls will be new. Yeah.
Will be brand new.
Brand new. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't have any other questions.
Okay, a couple general questions for Mike. Are the other 6 wells that the military had, are they dead? Or are they just not in use? Or are they owned by other people?
Yeah, so the other 6 wells currently owned by Sunflower Redevelopment Group.
Okay.
They're all, I would call them defunct, not used, haven't been used.
Dormant.
Yeah. We do have an agreement. So there's water rights associated with these wells too. And so DeSoto holds water rights for these 6 points of diversion. And we have an agreement with Sunflower that we can get 2 more of the wells and additional water rights if we can show the state that we're going to need, that we can justify the demand.
So if we get multiple industrial things, we need the capacity, then there are additional well sites available.
That's right. We could get two of the 6 left over. And if we have needs above that, we just have to look for new sites.
So we drill new wells, get the new controls. What's general lifespan before you'd have to move to another 50 feet away and make a new well?
Well, the originals were in 1940. and it's 2020, so, yeah, sometime around 60 or 80 years, I would think, yeah. There was a period of time, probably a 20-year period of time where I don't think the treatment was really kept up like it really should have been. And so that life might be extended with, a really good maintenance program where you're treating the wells really, on an annual basis. But yeah, I would say 50 to 80 years.
Is your intent to use COVID funds to go ahead and do the rehab of them as well, probably?
That would be a logical, that'd be a logical thing to use that for, right? But I want to have that discussion in the CIP, CIP overhaul.
Anything else from anybody? Or a motion?
I'll make a motion that we proceed with the design, and that the mayor sign engineering service agreements with George Butler and Associates in the amount of, is that in the amount of 72,330 or in the amount not to exceed 72?
Well, the contract is written as hourly not to exceed, so if you want the motion to match that, that'd be fine.
So in the amount not to exceed $72,330.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Lane,
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Honeyman,
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
Murdoch.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Charles and Colin, for joining us tonight.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, council.
We'll move on. Item E, discuss retreat scheduled for October 23rd.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. So this item has two topics. And the first thing we'll talk about is the scheduled retreat that you have in front of you for this Saturday at the Johnson County Community College. I just have a kind of brief outline of kind of the morning sessions, afternoon sessions, just to give you kind of a timeline of when we would meet. And then also would have lunch. If there's no discussion or any alterations to that timeline, we can move on to the next item. The lunch is scheduled just to be a break. If you would like, we could talk to the facilitator, maybe have that a working lunch. I would mention that we are changing rooms during that period. I'm not sure if I could talk to the caterer to get lunch brought into that room on such short notice. If that's the will of the council, I could make a phone call and let you know. But at one day's notice, I'm not sure they'd be willing to do that.
Okay.
And then I just provided you kind of the first 3 pages, which has the agenda, and then kind of a little bit of a rough agenda from the facilitator, and then just some council hot topics that we've discussed in previous meetings. And just wanted to touch base with you and make sure there was nothing else you wanted to add or delete from those topics.
Okay. So we'll tackle the scheduling stuff pretty good first. So are we good with a short break for lunch? If we have to move rooms, so. Anybody?
I mean, if we can work over lunch in the other room, that's what I'd be in favor of.
Yeah, 'cause originally I thought it ended at 2, so, and I've got some evening stuff that I have to work. So, yeah, if we can work through lunch or have it at working lunch, that works.
Well,
Otherwise,
it was a barbecue buffet at lunch, right?
or shorten it.
Yeah, I mean, we can, we certainly figure something to work, right?
I'll talk to the facilitator and caterers and see. I don't see why we couldn't move something.
Roll that thing over to the other room, outside the other room, and we'll.
Grab it and we'll walk back, grab and go. Where are these rooms? Is that Rainier Center?
Yes, it's
Okay.
the same. If I'm not mistaken, I wasn't here, but it's the same rooms that you had your council retreat in 2019.
Okay.
And I'll be there at the door, so I can lead you in the right direction if you need.
There's signs everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
It's easy.
Mhm.
I'll still lost it.
On Saturday morning, parking shouldn't be too bad.
Yeah. And we really don't need a half an hour. I mean, we can start talking over breakfast too.
You're right, exactly. That's true. Okay. I think we're good on schedule. What you've got our comments there, right?
Okay, yeah.
So
And the next thing we have is, if there's nothing to add to the topics, we'll move on to the PowerPoint presentation. Just kind of a brief overview of the CIP submissions. So during the month of September, departments were putting together requests for the CIP. As you remember, this year we're doing an overhaul. So this presentation, I'm just giving you kind of a high-level, brief overview of the submission submitted by staff. After the presentation, council will have the opportunity to add any projects if they see something that, that they'd like added in, and then we can come back and get quotes and we present that to you. And then further on the process, we will put together a prioritization tool. I'm working with Whitney on that right now, where council members can go through and rank their projects, rank the projects due to their priorities. So with that, we'll just kind of do a quick overview. So change the slide.
Yeah.
So this is just an overview of the CIP submissions. There were over 40 submissions this year, totaling approximately $25 million in submissions. You can see kind of a breakdown of the project. So it's 45% streets, 27% parks and recreation, 23% water, and then the remaining are sewer and admin projects. The first one we'll talk about are streets and sidewalks projects. There were 14 street projects and 1 sidewalk project. We just combined them just because there's 1 sidewalk project, and that's the annual sidewalk project for $60,000. I'm not going to go through each of these projects. I'm just going to highlight a couple of them that I think are note. The first one is that I'd like to highlight is the Roundabout at Kill Creek. I know roundabouts have been a hot topic. This is a project that would involve a traffic study before any construction. We've noticed traffic being built up at Kill Creek and 83rd Street, and the roundabout is a potential solution. Another one is the 83rd Street design and replacement. This is just the design and replacement of the bridge. It's on the deck of that. We can go on to the next one.
Actually, just real quick, so the 83rd Street Bridge, that's already in the CIP. It's already a funded federal funds for that. That'll remain in the CIP. So it's a 95th Street Bridge deck over Kill Creek. That's the one you're thinking of, Brandon.
Sorry, I looked at the wrong one.
And if you've driven it, you know it's bad. We need to do something with that.
Thank you.
Yep.
On the next ones, we have the next one I'll highlight is the purchase of the 8.7 acres adjacent to the Public Works building. That's the street building. It's the land directly to the west of it. And just talking to the streets department, they're looking at potential expansion in the outgoing years. They just wanted to put it on the radar. The next one would be of note would be the wash station for the street department building. This would just be kind of like a car wash for the large trucks. When you're thinking about, especially the ones that are putting down salt and sand in the winter, this is an enclosed building. They'd be able to get the rust off or get the sand off to prevent rust and have longer uses of their buildings. We can move on to Parks and Recreation projects. These projects, the first one I really wanted to note was the trails for a possible bond referendum. We're going to come back to council and kind of give a little more explanation on this. I believe the mayor and Councilmember Daniels are familiar with this project. The Parks Advisory Board has been developing a proposal for a bond referendum to expand trails throughout the city. If you'd like more details, they are on the detailed sheet, but this project would be funded through bonds after the election if it was to succeed. The next one, it would be a splash ground. Think of it as a splash pad. This is another one that was identified in the Parks Master Plan. This would provide some accessibility, especially for younger children, for some kind of outdoor recreation, for water play. The next one would be the skate park. This also was identified in the Parks Master Plan as another alternative for specifically older members of specifically older teens in the community. Think of residents and youth that aren't really participating in the organized sports or the soccer, the basketball. This would give them some kind of recreational opportunity that's not an organized sport. The last one I wanted to identify on this would be the soccer field add-ons at Riverfest Park. This would be permanent restrooms, and a paved parking lot out at Riverfest Park. And those are kind of the major ones I wanted to identify in that list. Mike, is there anything else you want to call out?
No.
Okay. That's good. The next one we'll talk about is water projects. The majority of the water projects are just replacements and increase for capacity and growth. The only one I really want to call out would be the system for $50,000. That's an automated system that would be at the water plant. I think, Mike, you mentioned that before, for added capacity at the water plant.
Which one?
The
SCADA.
SCADA. The SCADA system. I'm sorry. Yeah. That was submitted by the water department to automate some of their systems out there.
The other one, Brandon, before we leave that one, replace water mains along Penner Avenue. You remember Fourth of July, the VFW
mains?
had it. Yeah, so $700,000 is probably really high for that. I don't think we'd possibly spend that much, but that's that project. And I think if we're gonna solve their issue before next 4th of July, we need to get on that one. So
Yeah.
that was the only one I wanted to point out there.
We had that halfway engineered at that meeting, I think.
Oh, it's pretty much, yeah, that's right. Just needing to pay for it.
The next ones are the sewer projects. So these are mostly replacements to the sewer plant and system upgrades. The wastewater system upgrades, that would include a lift station upgrade, a sludge pump, and 2 pumps. We've combined that into one package just because of the small dollar amounts for those.
Just a background question then on sewer. Does our sewer treatment plant capacity match, or is it paired with our water? So we got 4 MGD capacity on the treatments, water, fresh water. Do we have 4?
Yeah, no, not quite.
Or 2, or I mean,
Not quite. So the capacity of the plant as it sits today is about 1.4 MGD. You remember, large part of the city is not on sewer,
Right.
So we got a lot more water demand than sewer.
production, yeah.
Yeah. So that's the capacity, 1.4. We average about 0.6 MGD, so there's quite a bit of extra capacity there now. The plant was designed, it's modular, and so we can triple its capacity within its current footprint with the current headworks buildings. We could triple that 1.4 to bring the ultimate. But yeah, it's at about 1.4 now. The other, before we leave that sewer force main along 82nd Street, remember we actually have that under design now with Blue Water Solutions Group. That's actually the one that was put in 2006, and it has some corrosion problems. So we're kind of moving forward with that project already, just in the design phase now.
We can move on to the administration. There's nothing else. We can move on to the
Okay.
The final category is the administration. Since there's only 2, I'll talk about both of these. The branded monument sign program. This is basically a cohesive branding for all city monuments across the organization. It would include a new highway sign on K10, similar to the sign that Eudora has. It would also include refresh signs along the east and west Y, a new Miller Park sign, and a new Riverfest sign. And finally, the outdoor warning sign, and that's a type, it should be outdoor warning signal, excuse me. That is $54,000. Those would be new warning sirens that would be in the expanded areas of DeSoto. So any areas that we annex, we would need to put sirens out in those areas.
Warning sirens.
Sirens, yes, sorry. And then with that, kind of the next steps would just be we're going to send out a revised CIP because a couple of the numbers have changed, just talking with staff. And we'll add in any additional CIP items that council would like. And we will send back the CIP along with a prioritization tool to council, and then we will come back to council with your rankings.
Yeah, so more globally then, the CIP overhaul, what we wanted to do is, first of all, get the laundry wish list from the department heads. Secondly, get your wish lists, because we don't have any of those. and make sure that for these projects that already have funding committed or we're already committed to, kind of get those slotted in. Get some sort of a prioritization from this group before we really take it out to the public. And so that's kind of the phase we're in now. Getting the laundry list, getting a prioritization before we go to the public. And that'll give us a chance to kind of tweak some of these project scopes and fees and cost as well. But we want to have that. We don't just want to have a blank piece of paper to the public. We want to direct that a little bit. But then a good 4 to 6 weeks of public engagement with open houses and maybe online surveys for that before we kind of come back and match up funding with projects. So the one thing we didn't want you to feel confined by is any sort of funding discussion right now. All sorts of funding opportunities, things that we already have in the pipeline, things that we do anyway. So the funding side, I think, we'll leave after we have a project prioritization, a handle on those, and then we'll start matching up funding sources.
Yeah, and that prioritization tool will be a Survey Monkey that we'll send out. That will have what it will do is it'll rank the projects based on their funding source. So, for example, you'll see water projects together, you'll rank water projects, and then we'll also ask council to come back and rank all projects against each other so we can get kind of a ranking of each of the projects.
Very good. Yep.
Just a little wordsmith or the Kill Creek Roundabout, maybe that should be titled Kill Creek Intersection Improvement Study / Improvements.
Traffic control, yeah.
Okay.
Just
Yeah, don't say it's a roundabout
Right,
where
we
people
haven't
are automatically
had
not going to
the
like
study
it.
yet. We don't know what.
Well, I mean, that's where the first one was supposed to go, right? I mean,
Yeah, that goes all the way back to the Arbor Ridge subdivision.
because I mean,
When-
they got
when
that,
that was-
into the.
Yeah, the old gas there,
Yeah.
or whatever. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, just
Wording.
We'll make that change.
Okay. Kevin, did you have a comment?
No, I was just following up on that.
Yeah. All right.
Brandon, did you want me to read both these or just the bottom one?
Just the bottom one. So the last thing we need to do is, in order to hold the special meeting for the retreat, we need to have a motion to basically call for the special meeting.
Okay.
You ready? Mayor?
Yeah.
I move that the city council call a special meeting for the annual council retreat on Saturday, October 23rd at Johnson County Community College main campus, 12345 College Boulevard, Overland Park, Kansas, 66210, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. in room RC 101 A and B.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second the motion.
And a second. Any discussion of the motion? Roll call, please.
Lane.
Yes.
Daniels.
Yes.
Hanneman.
Yes.
Ritter.
Yes.
Murdoch.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Is that it? That concludes this part of the meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Item 5, executive session. We do not have anything tonight, correct?
Correct.
All right. So we will go to advisory reports. Mike, anything else for us?
No, just one announcement. Don't forget the movie night in the park after our retreat. If we haven't spent enough time together already, we can all head down to Riverfest. Saturday evening, Hocus Pocus is the main event. There will be free popcorn and vendors and merriment. So, yeah, just wanted to.
And witches on the screen.
Spooky goblins, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Patrick?
Yes, and sorry to keep I know it's getting late, but very quickly, and without prejudging this issue, so Don Parr, obviously he's doing Arbor Ridge. He constructed the turn lane on 83rd Street. He has indicated he was under the impression that that would be credited towards his excise tax. And I've talked to him, and my plan was to bring forward to you guys at the November 4th meeting, an agreement for you to consider as to whether he should get that credit. He'll still be, with the remaining lots he has, I think there's still around $10,000 he would still have to pay an excise tax. But all I would ask from you tonight, under our regulations, we don't have any authority as staff to, I mean, we have to collect that excise tax if he pulls a building permit, but there is a provision for an appeal to be filed, and once that appeal's filed, if you authorize it, the governing body could accept a letter of credit for that amount of excise tax until, you know, you would resolve the appeal. And the reason I'm asking is Dawn is between a rock and a hard place because he has builders wanting to pull building permits, but they would have to pay the excise tax, and then Dawn says he's paying it in, you know, if he has to pay it, it's on him, not his builders. He would have to refund them. So if you're comfortable with it, I would work with Dawn to just at least offer to him that for any building permits pulled, we would need a letter of credit equal to the assessed excise tax for those lots until you can take the issue up at the November 4th meeting and decide what you guys want to do on that excise tax. Just throw that out there. Obviously, if you don't want to do that, I'll just let Dawn know that we really don't have any flexibility, you know, to offer. But if that is something you want to accommodate him on, I think that would work from staff's perspective to be able to let him go ahead and pull building permits, but still be protected on the excise tax.
Seems like a reasonable accommodation or compromise to me.
Why does he think there's a credit, and why would there be a discrepancy of what we, I mean, the whole issue to begin with that?
Within our regulations, we do have a credit provision that if you, as the developer, do construction on an arterial road, that can be a credit, but there are a couple of other requirements that project was in the CIP, and it can't be a minimum infrastructure item for that development. So I'm comfortable, and I've already told Dawn that under our regulations, the governing, well, you would have to decide whether it's an appropriate credit anyway. It's a governing body issues. But what Dawn has indicated is that, you know, he segregated out those monies for that turn lane. He has been under the impression that that is a credit, and he's indicated he was shocked to learn when we said, well, you know, we definitely don't think it qualifies.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No,
do we have minutes and recordings of the meetings when that was discussed? And
should have. Yeah.
I don't recall when, was this for the?
That was when we suspended the excise tax. And so what Dawn has said is when and there is in the agreement, I don't know that I did it at the request of Dawn, but I put in there that suspension doesn't affect any other credits he might qualify for, but there's nothing having to do with the turn lane or anything. But Dawn, and obviously, I mean, Dawn's always been a very transparent, honest guy, but what he says is he had that impression, and because of that, he's told his builders that they're not on the hook for this excise tax, and if it turns out it has to be paid, that will be something he will pay out of his pocket, and they don't have to worry about it.
How much are we talking?
About $152,000. So a big chunk.
If I recall, he had the existing 14 lots that were free in that one section, and then he got 2 years, right?
Yeah, 2-year period, and then actually went over that period, and so there were some lots that excise tax wasn't collected, but you guys decided just to call it a wash and extend the agreement to cover those, and after that, excise tax is imposed.
There was a couple of extensions on that, weren't there?
Yeah.
Do you recall how many lots that was?
Oh, not off the top of my head, I'm sorry. The excise, it turns out it's about $2,000 for a quarter-acre lot. So for a home, it's about $2,000 per building permit on average.
So what kind of action do you need from us to make this?
Yeah, just consensus that a letter of credit would, until we are actually able to take it up, or?
Yeah, just what it says is, unless a letter of credit is received and approved by the governing body. So, yeah, if you can just take a vote authorizing me to work that out with Dawn, a letter of credit, that would, I'd feel comfortable that we're staying within the bounds of the ordinance we have.
Okay.
And at this point, that's not saying we're waiving it or not waiving it, it's just we're letting him rack up some credit till it's resolved.
Correct. I'll be very clear with him. This isn't prejudging that issue. It's just simply a bridge to, let him pull building permits.
For continued building. Still got some season left.
What's that?
I said he's still got some season left to finish building.
So a motion to allow Patrick to accept a letter of credit from Don Parr covering the permits until the excise tax issue is resolved.
Correct.
I'll second that motion.
All right, we have a motion, a second. Did you get that, Brandon?
I'd like you to make him repeat it.
Now, would you repeat that one? I'm sorry.
Are you serious?
You repeat your
Yeah.
motion.
Okay. Making a motion to allow Patrick, the city attorney, to accept a letter of credit from Don Parr for building permit excise fees until the excise fee issue is resolved.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
And second by Murdoch. Okay, any other discussion of the motion? Roll call, please.
Lane? Yes. Daniels?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Ritter?
Yes.
Murdoch?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay.
That's
Anything
it
else?
for me.
Thank you, Patrick.
Without being written, everybody's trying to go, how do we say it?
Brad's not here, so city clerk, I think you covered your stuff.
I think we covered it. No report.
Okay. Council comments. Danny, you want to start?
I'm done, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin? Ritter.
I had one citizen call me and he noticed the sidewalk improvements that were going around 82nd Street. And he was wondering how his subdivision might get on such a list to get curbs or sidewalks or street improvements. He lives on 84th Terrace. And I can forward that contact information to you or Brad.
Yeah,
I can
yeah.
maybe just have a discussion with him.
Sure. No problem.
Be in the census, right census district, right?
Yeah, it would. CDBG stuff.
So, I told him I would ask, so. The other is, as I noticed the construction site out by 95th and Waverly added a bunch of silt fence.
Yep.
And so, I noticed that water really ran a lot of mud.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, we had to put a stop work order on them until those improvements were done, and we still have some work left to do that before they can pave.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's all I have, Mayor.
All right. Rob, anything tonight?
Just tagging on the 2nd Street, was at the chamber luncheon today, and there were 2 comments about how it's nice having it, it's good, and it's well past time on that, so. Second, this just came up as I was driving in, streetlights.
Yeah.
I've seen some comments, and I've heard comments from people, and I saw one tonight, blue streetlights.
You like those?
And then also, if you can just address that, and then also, it seems like half the streetlights on 91st are off a lot of times.
Oh, on the new section?
On the new section, when I go by there at night. It's like from pretty much Merck down, they're off, so if you're driving back from Lexington Lake in the dark, 91st is fairly dark for a good portion of it.
I'll have to check up on that.
I've had somebody ask
so-
about that too.
The
Maybe
blue
that's the leverage that
Yeah.
Start turning the lights off.
The blue street lights, they're not blue, they're actually purple. Any K-State fan will
That is
say.
true. They are purple.
So I didn't realize, but if you ever drive around Lawrence at night,
Mhm.
it's like about half of them over there are blue like that. And what happened was Evergy received a massive shipment of streetlights that, and I don't know which manufacturer it was, but are essentially defective. The interior coating on the inside of the bulb is such that it's breaking down because of the light that's transmitted or the heat or something. It breaks down over time and causes that blue or purple hue to appear. Manufacturers admitted the problem, has supplied new bulbs to Evergy, and they're just in the process of finding them and replacing them now. So yeah, you'll see them.
So they are
around.
being replaced, it's just finding and
It's just taking some time
as
to
they,
get them all
new ones
replaced.
occur, then,
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
Kevin, do you know any inside ball on that?
I abstain.
Okay.
And like I said, I saw
No,
one
I
just
do not.
down the
You know,
street.
transmission and delivery and generation
Different
are
deal.
really separate, so I had not heard that there was a bulb issue yet, so.
Yep. There's a few. There's one down the river, entrance to Riverfest Park is one of them.
Yeah, there's one between, on 84th here, between Ottawa and City Hall.
Yeah.
And that's what made me see it on the
I
way in
think
and
I
go,
noticed that one
I've
the
been
other day,
asked,
yeah.
I've been asked about them, so that's where it's like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a bulb defect.
Usually Kill Creek where I see them.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, there's one on Kill Creek.
Yeah,
Couple by the
they're just
church.
randomly scattered.
Yeah.
Just
so
as they
we're-
fail, they start to break down.
Yep.
Okay, good. All right. Lori,
I don't think I have anything for tonight, Mayor.
okay. Kevin?
I have nothing meaningful to
All
contribute.
right. Well, good meeting, everybody. A little longer than we've had in a while.
It is.
I just, the only thing I was gonna do was just, for the record, thank Bella Sanchez for her work and that summer, or the street festival that she put on this last weekend was a real nice event, well attended, a lot of good vendors up there, some good food and good time, so,
Might I ask a question about it, because I was not able to attend it?
yeah.
How, we've had kind of a few of these going on with streets closed off and partly closed off, and not considering DeSoto Days, because that's kind of even a lot bigger, but is there any kind of issue with parking that we should look into or anything? Is it work out all right?
I don't think
As
there-
far as
I didn't
parking
notice
or
an
anything
issue
like that?
At it.
Okay.
So obviously in front of Cause, it was not closed and there was, so all that parking was open. I think I parked in front of the school district building down in the
Okay.
corner and walked up.
Yeah.
There's still a fair amount of
Okay.
parking on all the side streets. I mean,
Okay,
when I say it was well attended, there was a good crowd, 150 people
Yeah.
probably at the time we were there, but.
Well, and I know from an inconvenience standpoint, I forgot about it in the morning and was making a run to the brush dump with a pickup full of brush. And it wasn't a big deal just to literally go around the block and
Yeah.
bypass it.
yeah.
It wasn't that inconvenient just from a resident hauling a big bunch of brush on a pickup to just go, oh, whoops, okay, go around.
Yeah. Well, and I wasn't asking in a negative way that we don't do it. I was just asking in a way, it's kind of one of the many things on my list of city things, is just if we made in the future, as we work on the downtown DeSoto, if we make it more where it's easy to shut off, make it kind of like a little square downtown
have
square feel,
parking on
where
it,
that
yeah.
happens a lot, we might want to designate areas or find ways to make other parking available when we have to do that. And I don't know what that is, but I'm sure there's places down in that area that could be used or accessed for that, and just things like that.
I've only heard positive, and this is something when I came on council, I was wanting to see more stuff downtown, and I've only heard positive things from almost every event that's been in that downtown block area and drawing people down to it.
It was a good time.
Good.
So I think that's all I really have tonight.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?